Okay, everybody good? Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us here today. I want to recognize my colleagues that have joined us here first today. We have Congressman Jerry Nadler, Congressman and Vice Chair of the Democratic Caucus, Ted Lieu, Congressman George Latimer, Congressman Johnny Olszewski, and Congressman Mike Thompson, who also chairs the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, as well as some truly impressive leaders from Western New York and across our country. My dear friend and colleague in government from Buffalo, who we're going to hear from, Councilwoman Vanessa Everheart, as well as Thomas Buford Jr., the president and CEO of the Buffalo Urban League. And a special thanks also to Vanessa Gonzalez from Giffords, who's joined us here today as well. 3 years ago today, my hometown of Buffalo, New York, joined an ever-growing list of cities victimized by domestic terrorism. On this day, 3 years ago, a racist gunman drove more than 2.5 hours to Tops Friendly Markets in the heart of our community and opened fire. In 123 seconds, he stole 10 precious, beautiful souls from us that day. And he severely injured 3 others, including Councilwoman Everhart's son, Zaire Goodman. And he left our community and our country permanently scarred. It was one of the darkest days in our city's history and in our nation's history, which was marked by unimaginable tragedy. But it could have been even worse if it were not for the courage and sacrifice of retired police officer Aaron Salter Jr., whose heroic actions saved lives that day. Lieutenant Salter, a 30-year veteran of the Buffalo Police Department, was working that day at Tops as an armed security guard. When gunshots rang out, he drew his weapon and opened fire on the terrorist, hitting his target. But because of that hate-filled killer, protected by military-grade RF-1 body armor, he was unharmed and returned fire, killing Lieutenant Salter. Lieutenant Salter did not die in vain. Because of his heroism and his quick action, the shooter was delayed, buying precious seconds for patrons and employees to hide or escape. Because of his actions, there is no doubt that there are people alive today. We thank God for people like Aaron Salter Jr., people who put themselves in harm's way to protect innocent lives. It's in his memory and those of his fellow victims that we're here today to introduce legislation that will prevent military-grade body armor from falling into the wrong hands. The Aaron Salter Jr. Responsible Body Armor Possession Act would ban the sale and ownership of RF-1 body armor or to civilians, rightfully reserving its use for law enforcement and our nation's military. This is the type of armor that is designed to protect against 7.62 millimeter full metal jacket lead core rifle ammunition used in war. Let's be clear. This is not a knee-jerk reaction. It's a response to a pattern. Body armor like this has been used time and time again in mass shootings across our country, including Sutherland Springs, Texas, Aurora, Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, San Bernardino, California, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and many others. Perpetrators in these instances have been able to easily purchase enhanced body armor and use it to carry out horrific acts of violence because there's no federal restriction on this equipment for average citizens. While states like New York have taken action in the wake of 514, civilians in other states have unfettered access to enhanced heavy-duty body armor designed to withstand heavy rifle ammunition. Frankly, it's bad enough that weapons of war are making it onto our streets. It adds insult to injury to then give these domestic terrorists unfettered access to tools that prevent police from stopping acts of violence. These perpetrators should not be better armed and protected than our own law enforcement officers that are keeping our streets safe. This legislation will rectify that loophole. This is common sense. It protects police. It protects the public. And if enacted today, it will save lives, just like Lieutenant Aaron Salter Jr. did on that terrible day 3 years ago. That's why it's received the endorsement of Giffords, Everytown for Gun Safety, Brady, United Against Gun Violence, Newtown Action Alliance, and the Fraternal Order of Police. Lastly, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to Congresswoman Grace Meng for previously carrying this legislation and for her continued support of this important bill, as well as my predecessor, Congressman Brian Higgins, who initially put this forward just a couple of years ago. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to, again, a fearless leader, an incredible advocate, and a champion for the people of Buffalo, of New York, and our great nation, and most importantly, the mother of Zaire Goodman, Councilwoman Vanessa Everheart.
Thank you, Congressman Kennedy. Today is a sad day, right? It is a sad day for us Buffalonians. I thought about coming here, right, and not being in Buffalo on this day. But I knew that who I am, I had to do something, right? Being here with Congressman Kennedy is important. It is important because we need to show that Buffalo stands behind our congressman. He has done so much for the Buffalo community in not only surrounding 514, but everything. He makes sure that we are taken care of and that our voices are heard. And so I felt the need to be here to stand with him on the day that he introduced this bill. You know, Aaron Salter is a hero in the Buffalo community. He served on the Buffalo Police Department for decades. He protected our community for a very long time. And on 5/14/2022, he also protected residents of the city of Buffalo. And he made sure that people were able to get out. He did not make it out himself, but people are alive today because of his heroism. You know, my son worked at the Tops grocery store, and so he had the privilege of knowing Mr. Salter for years. And he would always talk about Mr. Salter. He admired him. He was the security guard at the store. And so I personally have never had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Salter, but my son really, really admired him. And so I am just grateful to my congressman, who I get to vote for, and knowing that he is supporting us, he hears us, he's listening to us, right? What those families went through that day and what they are going through every single day is hard. But elected leaders should be doing exactly this. They should be putting forward legislation that will protect people for years to come. Their family members were not protected that day. But there is something we can do about future families. And so thank you so much, Congressman Kennedy, and to all of your colleagues for your support of this piece of legislation. It is important that we stand united against things like this because it literally takes lives. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. You're amazing. Thank you, Councilwoman Everheart. Next, we're going to hear from Thomas Buford, the president and CEO of the Buffalo Urban League, another champion for the people, champion for our community, an advocate for safety and safe streets across America. Thomas.
Thank you, Congressman. So, good afternoon, and this is indeed a day of reverence for the city of Buffalo, for all of America. The trauma that happened on May 14th, 2022 continues to reverberate through our community. We're still suffering, and we're still trying to heal in this community. So I was also challenged, as was Councilwoman Everheart, in terms of being there in Buffalo or being here. But I did realize the importance of this legislation and that it passed. I happen to know Lieutenant Salter in that, in addition to being with the Urban League, I'm also, my wife is also a retired lieutenant from the Buffalo Police Department, as is her mother, a retired police officer, and they both served with him, you know, and I would see him, you know, going into that grocery store as well. And I know when he left there that day, just like me and my family, we were always waiting and expecting our loved one to come home that day, you know, and the fact that he serves in that community in that capacity and then, you know, retired and took that other job to support, you know, not him just being a father and a husband, but he was also an inventor, right? So this was like probably the furthest thing, and, you know, he thought that his life was going to, you know, that his life would not be in the same peril. But unfortunately, due to this, the conditions that allowed for this type of body armor protection, his life was cut short, and all of our lives were changed that day. I fully support that. The Buffalo Urban League continues to operate a resiliency center, so we're still dealing with people who are trying to manage through the trauma, and we know that we don't know when that's going to come to an end, and everyone is kind of dealing with that in their own way. But this legislation is extremely important to save not only more lives in our local community, but across the nation. I want to thank Congressman Kennedy for his efforts here and trying to move this forward, and all else who support this. Thank you so much.
Next, we are going to hear from Vanessa Gonzalez from Giffords. Thank you, Vanessa, for being here and for your support.
Of course. Hello, everybody. Vanessa Gonzalez. I'm Vice President of Government and Political Affairs at Giffords, an organization started by former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords after she herself was shot in the head at a neighborhood constituency event. It's really an honor to be here, not only representing Gabby and Giffords, but to stand along so many of these dedicated leaders who are with us in the fight to prevent gun violence. I want to express my deepest gratitude to the survivors who are here. Thank you, thank you. And of course to Congressman Kennedy for being willing to step up, be in that leadership space and introduce this important legislation. Sorry, I get a little choked up at all of these. 3 years ago, a horrific tragedy happened in Buffalo that we can all agree should never have occurred. Today, we're going to remember all the victims, all the families, and their survivors. And we should remember them every single day. At Giffords, we will not stop fighting for justice in partnership with these congressional leaders, families, and survivors, as well as our other partners at Brady, Everytown, and other organizations across the country fighting to prevent one more death. Giffords Law Center is actually extremely proud to represent several families and a survivor in a lawsuit seeking accountability from social media companies and the gun industry who played a role in this tragedy. It's a systemic issue, and we are going to get it at every angle. Whether it's from the shooter, it's from the system, it's from justice, it's from a messy Ways and Means hearing. We're going to be there, and we're going to keep fighting. We also need Congress to pass this legislation. We happily, strongly endorse the Aaron Salter Jr. Responsible Body Armor Possession Act, which would help ensure this equipment intended to protect those who swore an oath to our country and defend our communities doesn't fall into the hands of those who seek to do our country harm, just like it did that day 3 years ago. I want to thank the Councilwoman for her courage and Congressman Kennedy for your leadership. We are true partners with you. We will not stop fighting until we achieve justice for all survivors and put an end to gun violence prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. We have been building support for this legislation, and I'm so honored to have my colleagues that have signed on to this legislation, and of course there are many others that are unable to join us out here for this announcement, but are here with us in spirit. I'd like to begin with the New York delegation. With that, the Dean of the New York delegation, Jerry Nadler, to say a few words.
Well, thank you. I want to thank Congressman Kennedy for his leadership in introducing this important legislation. 3 years ago today, his hometown of Buffalo was forever changed when it joined the all-too-long list of communities that have faced tragedy at the hands of a mass shooter. 10 people lost their lives that day at the Top supermarket, including Aaron Salter Jr., the security guard on duty after whom this bill is named. Mr. Salter bravely put his own life on the line to protect the shoppers in that store. But his weapon was no match for the military-grade body armor being worn by the shooter, who returned fire and took Mr. Salter's life. With this legislation, we honor his courage and sacrifice with action. There is no reason that any civilian needs enhanced body armor, period. It only helps to fuel such horrific events as we saw in Buffalo and other mass shootings, and it has no place on our streets except to protect the law enforcement officers who keep us safe. Our communities are already flooded with weapons of war like military-style assault rifles, the weapon of choice for mass shooters. And today, these perpetrators can simply go online and purchase enhanced body armor to go with it so that they can maximize their ability to bring terror and violence to our streets. Enough is enough. We have an epidemic of gun violence in our country, and we have an obligation to do everything we can to protect our constituents and our fellow citizens. This legislation takes an important step forward to make our communities safer by closing a dangerous loophole, and I thank Congressman Kennedy for introducing it.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Congressman Dan Goldman, who is also a sponsor of this legislation. Thank you. Right on time.
Thanks very much to my friend and colleague, Representative Kennedy, for leading this charge on what is yet another example of simple common sense gun safety legislation that would save lives while adhering to the Constitution. As we all know by now, 3 years ago today, 10 individuals shopping at a grocery store were murdered by someone with an assault weapon and with a military-grade style body armor. This person was motivated by bigotry, by racism, by anti-Semitism, by the Great Replacement theory, radicalized online. And that is a long-term process to stop that from happening, and it's something that we need to continue to work on. But we can do something about the actions that people take because of that bigotry. And we can make it safer for everyone else around our communities if we implement common sense gun legislation. And there is nothing that should be more common sense than simply keeping military weapons and military material out of civilians' hands. There's no reason why a civilian should have an assault weapon or should have military-style body armor. The feeling of invincibility creates a much more aggressive individual, and more people therefore die because of that feeling of invincibility with body armor. So I'm very proud to be here to co-sponsor Representative Kennedy's Aaron Salter Jr. Responsible Body Armor Possession Act. These were preventable deaths, and we must do everything we can to stop the scourge of mass shootings with military-grade materials that have no business being in the hands of civilians. Thank you.
Is George still here? George. Next, the newest addition to the New York delegation, and a wonderful leader from Westchester, New York, and from the New York State Senate that I served with him in Assembly, Congressman George Latimer.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, George. Thank you. Thanks, Tim. There's a lot of people in public office that like to say they're tough on crime. And they like to say that they want to protect our police. And they say they want to stop violent criminals. Well, that's exactly what Congressman Kennedy has in this bill. He has a bill that is tough on crime. He has a bill that will protect our police. He has a bill that will stop violent criminals. When a violent criminal wants to do their violent work and the police try to stop them, being tough isn't just a matter of words. It's making sure that criminal can't be protected from the response of a person who's been hired, whether a security guard or a police officer, to stop them. If the mass murderer that day did not have that body armor on, Aaron Salter would be alive and he would be dead. And most of those people that died that day would still be alive. Now, we can't bring him back, but we can prevent what happened in Buffalo from happening in other communities. I'm at the other end of the state from Buffalo, but it could happen in my backyard as sure as it happened in Buffalo that day. We owe Congressman Kennedy a debt of gratitude because he is taking a position that supports our police and goes after violent crime and protects us in the way that we can be protected. Tim, thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George. Thank you, Congressman Latimer. Next, the Vice Chair of the Democratic Caucus, an incredible leader from California, Congressman Ted Lieu. Thank you.
I want to thank Representative Kennedy for convening this press conference and for his body armor legislation. I want to thank the members of Congress and local leaders who are here with us today. And we remember the victims of this mass shooting 3 years ago. And the best way to honor them is to try to prevent this from happening again. The shooter, the murderer, wore body armor that was military grade, and he was actually shot. And Lieutenant Salter showed great heroism and courage, shot the assailant, but because of his body armor, he was able to continue his rampage and kill more people. Representative Kennedy's body armor legislation, named after Lieutenant Salter, would prevent this from happening in the future. It is difficult to think of any reason why a civilian would need military-grade body armor. And that's why this legislation is supported by numerous gun safety groups, as well as the Fraternal Order of Police. We're here during National Police Week, and we call on House Republicans that if you want to make sure these tragedies don't happen again in the future with military-grade body armor, please put Representative Kennedy's bill up for a vote in the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Lieu. Next, I want to call on another new member representing Maryland, great leader and former local leader in government, now leading at the national level, Johnny Olszewski. Johnny O. Thank you.
Well, first of all, my heartfelt thanks to Congressman Kennedy for leading on this critical issue. And 3 years later, those of us in Baltimore and Maryland and across this country, our hearts go out to those remembering today in Buffalo. Thank you to our friends, Councilwoman. Thank you both so much for your stories, because our stories have power, and people need to hear the story of Lieutenant Salter. The last thing we should be doing when, not if, but when the next incident happens, we shouldn't be here again asking, why didn't we pass this legislation? Why didn't we stop that next tragedy? As someone who, like Representative Latimer, led a local government, I was responsible for thousands of police officers that I asked every day to step into the void and help keep our community safe. How tragic that we won't take a simple action that would keep them safe, just like we would have kept Lieutenant Salter safe had we passed this legislation. So I think about the men and women of the Baltimore County Police Department. I think about the men and women of the Buffalo Police Department. I think about Lieutenant Salter. I think about all of law enforcement as we celebrate Police Week here on Capitol Hill. Let's pass this bill. Let's not come back in a year or in a couple of years and say, why didn't we? So thank you again to my colleagues in the House, to Representative Kennedy for his leadership on this critical issue. And let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny O. Thank you. And I'm so grateful for him being here, for his support. And I have saved the best for last. How's that? The chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force from California, Congressman Mike Thompson. Make up for it.
Tim, thank you very much, and I want to thank you for your leadership in this very important issue. And to the local leaders, thank you. I know from personal experience how rough it is for a community when gun violence and mass shootings strike your district or the area you represent, the people you live next door and the people that you love. So the fact that you came down here is very, very important. And I also want to thank my colleagues who are here today, who are here every day in order to help make our communities safer, to fight for gun violence prevention measures. This is a prime example of something that we can and should have already done that will save lives. And it's interesting juxtaposition to be talking about this bill today when we're celebrating law enforcement sacrifices and service across the country with law enforcement officers from all states here in Washington, D.C. For the Law Enforcement Week. And here it is. We have an important bill that would save their lives, make them safer, save community members' lives, make communities safer, and it's supported only by Democrats. Not once has there been a Republican co-author on this bill. Not once. And it's also interesting that in the wee hours of the morning, in a Ways and Means markup this morning, the Republicans have a bill that will make it easier for people to buy silencers. Now, how does this make any sense at all? They won't stop criminals and terrorists from being able to get access to body armor, and they won't prevent terrorists and criminals from making it more difficult for them to get silencers. All this does is put our entire community, every community across the country, in harm's way. It's important to think about that, and it's important that we speak up and speak out. I'm honored to be a co-author of this bill. I will do everything I can to help get it passed. As the father of a deputy sheriff, I don't want my kid on the street keeping your kid safe when he's exposed and criminals have access to this dangerous equipment that makes them more dangerous than they already are. So thank you all. Tim, thank you for your great leadership on this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Thompson. And with that, we'll open it up to any on-topic questions you may have. Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.